are the best decks in Master Duel for the Duelist Cup of 2024 and, of course, the mid-season format. I'm going to start doing a little bit more of these for Master Duel. I'm going to do one towards the end of the format when we get a ban list, and one to update us towards the middle of the format. Let me know what you guys think about that to see where I got right and got wrong. Of course, Big Dog, as you already know, as a Master Duel player and a TCG player that has done quite well over the course of my TCG career, these are just my opinions. And of course, if you have a different subjective opinion, go ahead and let me know. I think I give really good advice for Master Duel and Yu-Gi-Oh! In totality since I've been playing for so long and know so much, but I'm really excited to hear what you have to say. Let's go ahead and jump on in. I have 5 different categories and I decided to keep it simple this time around. Actually, I got to put that D tier as the Arby's tier, guys, because if you like the meats, then I'm not here to judge you, but yeah, I'm not here to judge you. Let's go ahead and jump on in and start talking about these particular decks. I think Arby's tier is obviously the tiers that you should strongly stay away from, with the S tier being the best decks available for it. Albaz, I would say Albaz was in the C tier, the branded deck, losing branded fusion to 1. Really, really painful. There are still some branded copium players that say that you can still recycle branded fusion, but while you have 1 branded fusion, most decks have 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, so it becomes incredibly hard to be able to play this deck, and I think that that's one of the biggest problems for the strategy right now. I think what's wrong with Blackwings right now is that it's incredibly inconsistent. Pot of Prosperity to 1 does suck, but even more importantly, we don't have the correct cards to make this deck over the top. That one monster being Bestial Dispatter, when that card comes out, I think Blackwing becomes a little bit better. Though it doesn't solve the inconsistency issues, it does allow Blackwing to make different boards and even better boards without the use of all the Blackwing cards. It makes Bestials a lot better with this deck. Blue Eyes is hands down the S tier Master Duel deck, guys. If you are not playing Blue Eyes, you are not getting anywhere in the Master Duel Cup. You're going to see the top... Okay, it's Arby's tier, my guy. It's pretty meat. I really think it's bad that Konami hasn't implemented a type of like game mode for anime tier Yu-Gi-Oh decks where you can only play anime cards. Probably even Highlander for most cards. I think that would be pretty cool, but it really seems like a missed opportunity to make those cards useful in a particular Yu-Gi-Oh format. I would give Chaos the benefit of the doubt because B would probably be closer to Takes a Good Pilot. I think Chaos, ironically, is in that B tier. I think it's a solid Yu-Gi-Oh deck. I've seen enough Master Duel clips from really good players, Master tier Yu-Gi-Oh players playing Chaos to show that if you know what you're doing, it can be a very good deck. Though I would not suggest it for everyone. I think it's a very niche group of players that can play it. And I would say the exact same thing for Dark World. Really niche Yu-Gi-Oh strategy that players can take advantage of. It is a deck where if your opponent does max see you, you can auto win by decking them out. The only problem is you have to play against that time limit. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I think Dark World isn't that great of a Master Duel strategy for most players. Dinos also fit in that B tier. It feels like B tier is like, if you're good with the deck and you know what you're doing, you can really succeed. But if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to utterly fail. Where the C tier, these decks have their own challenges to be able to compete. Dino has everything available for it, so a Dino player that knows exactly what they're doing can definitely compete with this deck. My biggest problem with 2 of the 3 of these decks so far is the gems. It requires way too many gems to be able to play these decks and craft them. I would say Ignister is probably closer to that C tier than the B tier. I don't think that Ignister is bad. It's actually one of my favorite pendulum strategies. But the problem with Ignister is that Cash Tira, Shangri-Ira still exists inside of Master Duel, and that completely locks out zones, which prevents you from playing. So that's one thing that it has going for it. Time is another thing, and it's a deck that you have to master. Dogmatica could be in that B tier right there. I think Dogmatica is a solid Yu-Gi-Oh deck that if you know what you're doing, being able to rip your opponent's extra deck is key. And For Hire, I think For Hire is closer to the A tier. I think it's probably low A tier because I don't think that the runic cards are very good. But at the same time, I do understand that if you're not going against Cash Tier, the runic cards can be fairly effective against a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh decks, a lot of back row heavy decks. I would say Galaxy Eyes is better than Arby's tier. It's one of the only anime decks outside of Blackwings that can be extremely successful if you know exactly what you're doing. The problem with Galaxy Eyes is that there's a lot of situations where you need to have cards on the field and players can easily get rid of those cards. So I would put it in C tier rather than Arby's. Generators. Oh, man. If you know what you're doing with generators, you're popping. But losing to Maxi is hard. Losing to Maxi and Ash Blossoms, I would say it has a similar problem to Branded. But the only difference between Generator is that Ash Blossoming a Generator boss stage is a lot more impactful because, like, you need that card to resolve. Whereas Ash Blossoming or Branded Fusion is not as problematic. But the only difference is Branded has one Branded Fusion. Generators, once they figure out the Maxi Ash Blossom epidemic, I think this deck's a lot better than what gives it credit. I would put Exosister in that if a good pilot plays it, they can be better. I think one of the biggest problems with Exosister is that it's missing certain cards to give it additional normal summons. But overall, this deck becomes play Exosister Ellis and Exosister Martha, and then Exceed summon by using level 4 monsters into your other Exosister cards. So this deck is very B tier right now. I would say that a good pilot can take it far. Same thing with Gishki Sprite. I thought that this was going to be one of the best decks in Master Duel. I'm actually going to put it at C tier. I don't think it's better than Exosister or any of those. This deck, I thought it was really good, and unfortunately, that's not the case. It's not a deck that's good. Master Duel did not do it justice, and even Sprite Elf doesn't really help it. It's just a little bit too fragile and a little bit too vulnerable in other Master Duel decks can play. Labyrinth S tier, guys. There's no doubt about it. This is one of the best decks in Master Duel. It has really good matchups against almost every deck in the entire game, and it's one of the sole reasons why Runic is being kept alive. I would still say that Runic Naturia is really, really good. This is actually Labyrinth's worst enemy because it can make cards like Naturia Parkion to be able to curb stomp Runic, but also can make a Naturia Beast to curb stomp spell reliant decks. I think that Melfi Sprite took a really big hit with losing Nimble Beaver, but I've seen a lot of players play Nimble Manta, so I'm going to give Melfi Sprite the benefit of the doubt and say it's the A tier. I've been seeing a lot of deck players rocking with this deck, and it's still really good. Maybe even a smaller Gishki engine, I'm not sure, but then you're probably playing a ton of bricks. I think Pler Patrol is really, really good right now. Pler Patrol is a pure Yu-Gi-Oh deck, can play Kaijus to be able to get over Kashtira boards. It also is a really good deck at being able to give your opponent token monsters through Jord. This deck's a lot better than what people are giving it credit. The only problem, the expense. I think that Prediction Princess are a lot better than what people give it. I'm going to put it in C tier, though I do think it could be a B tier type Yu-Gi-Oh deck. We're in a format where Book of Moon cards are pretty good, and this is a pretty good Book of Moon deck. Hurley, I've seen too many bad Hurley players on Master Duel to give it S tier. So I'm going to put it in A tier, and I'm going to put it as the strongest A tier deck. I think that Glue Eaters can get off on playing Labyrinth and just errating your opponent. Or just playing Kashtira and winning because your cards are unfair. And this deck requires you to actually have a brain to play. So inherently it is harder to play. Granted, you do glue eat with the X-Pearly Noir, but it's not as hard as glue eating with these decks. These decks the top tier decks can set up really easy, and this deck actually takes a brain to be able to set up. After playing Rika, I would say it's B tier. Definitely not the deck for me, but personally, but I know that players who have played Rika can really play this into the format incredibly well. It's a pretty powerful deck. Mathmech, I would say Mathmech is damn near Arby's tier. Kashtira Riseheart replaces Bestials, and that is incredibly problematic. To be honest with you, I think that Mathmech might actually, it has an opportunity to go higher, so I could be wrong on this C tier. I haven't seen a lot of Mathmech players onto the ladder, but I think after a Riseheart, there really isn't a ton that completely hinders his deck. So you know what? I'm going to go ahead and put it in B tier and say that a good Cyberse player can play it. Scarecrow just might be the best deck in Master Duel, in my opinion. It's incredibly good. The only problem is that it has a tricky Labyrinth matchup. I think that it's probably the best variant of Kashtira that you could be playing. Punk? Punk's solid. It's solid. It's not great until we get Gold Pride. I think Gold Pride makes it really, really a lot better, but it's ridiculously solid. Thunder Dragons, this deck is a brick. I'm just going to put it in C tier. I don't think it's as bad as Arby's tier, but I think it's just a walking brick. Could be a lot better though. Dark Magician, Arby's tier, right next to its Blue Eyes. Will we ever see Dark Magician and Blue Eyes leave Arby's tier? Probably no time soon. I think Cash is one of the best worst decks in Master Duel. In the TCG, the deck seemed a lot stronger. In Master Duel, it's incredibly balanced, which is interesting. Heroes, good pilot can definitely do a lot of things with them. I don't think it's a bad deck. I think Dragon Link is so ridiculously out-advantaged right now, it's not even funny. And allow me to explain, and this is coming from a Dragon Link player. I've won events with Dragon Link. I've topped events with Dragon Link, gotten to Masters with Dragon Link. Catch Tira is like, you auto-lose to Catch Tira. The moment that you see Catch Tira, the matchup becomes so much harder. But even more importantly, Catch Tira Finra outs almost like 90% of Dragon's boards. It's just unfair how that particular matchup like makes your deck utterly useless. And since so many Glue Eaters play that deck, it makes it incredibly hard to play Dragon Link. Now, if you take out Catch Tira, this deck's 8 S tier. But since it's just such, it just auto loses to Catch Tira, it becomes really, really hard to play. I would say Ninjas are in the best spot that they can be. I put them in that B tier. That's really solid for them right now. Not a deck that can play really well into the Runic cards. Doesn't really play well into Labyrinth, but can play decently well into Scareclaw and Catch Tira, which is a lot of being played right now. Trap Tricks. Yeah, this deck's just not great. I don't want to disrespect it and put it in RB tier. I think it's better than these, but to be honest with you, yeah, it's better. It's better. It's better. It's definitely a lot better. It definitely allows you to out the Book of Moon cards pretty easy, so I think it's a decent deck. Fluent Reese, I'd put it in that B tier. Not necessarily a bad deck, but not a great deck. I would say Marine Cess is slightly better or slightly in the same category as Math Mech. I think that's a really good placing right there. It's a solid Yu-Gi-Oh deck. Rescue Ace, I would not suggest playing Rescue Ace right now. The deck doesn't do anything important, and that's what's really crazy about the deck. Once it gets its new cards, I think that it's a lot better. I still can't put it that low. I'm gonna put it right here. I don't think it's that bad. I do think Sword Soul's pretty bad though. Sword Soul's pretty ass. We played Sword Soul in the event, and it was just a deck that was completely power crept no matter how you look at it. Like everywhere you go, your opponent just played better Yu-Gi-Oh cards and it puts you in a bad spot. And lastly is Tier Limit. This deck should be dead. It is dead. I would like to say it's dead. I have not seen a single Tier Limit player on the ladder. And that's what I have for my Master Duel tier list for the Selection Cup. For the cup that's coming up, or that we're doing right now. I hope you guys get to your Duelist level that you want to. Hope that you guys have a great one. But let me know what you think I got wrong and everything in between. Can't wait to see what you have to say.